Your 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football. Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Over 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 19th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 25 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Show with your hosts, Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry.
Fellow fantasy football freaks, Andy Hall back for Week 11, continuing to guide you to that championship hardware. The show, as always, available on the radio at 1350 a.m. ESPN in Des Moines, Iowa, Thursdays starting at 11 a.m. We're also digital, so if you missed any part of the show or you want to listen at your convenience, check us out on Apple Podcasts, the artist formerly known as iTunes, I guess. We're also on Stitcher and online at espndesmoines.com. Before we begin, would love for you to give us a like on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. We're on Twitter as well, helping you out at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio in case you want to chat about a wide variety of other topics, not necessarily related to fantasy football, although I'm more than happy to answer questions there too. Very good as I've always been about responding to anyone and everyone. You invest in me, I give that respect right back. Over the course of the hour, all the matchups, grades, and all the fantasy relevant players. Bargain Bin segment, sponsored by Twisted Vine Brewery later on, a segment I've been pretty much killing all year, giving you some dart throws that are likely still on your waiver wire, and I'll recap Week 10 of the Listener League as well. That's presented by our friends at Iowa Firecracken. Let's get going with these games, shall we? Thursday nighter, Tennessee at Pittsburgh. Imagine that, a Thursday nighter featuring two division-leading teams with all kinds of playoff implications. Exciting, right? Let's begin on the Titans side. Marcus Mariota draws yet another really tough matchup, facing a Steelers secondary that ranks second in passing yards allowed, only 182 per game. And they've only given up 8 passing scores all season while collecting 8 INT. A C grade for Mariota, considering the tough matchup. Not in love with his pass catchers either. Corey Davis is a C+. Rashard Matthews, a C. Tight end Delaney Walker on the bench. He has yet to reach the end zone in 2017. Pretty shocking considering his recent success in at least the last 8-9 years. Don't see it happening here either. DeMarco Murray, the preferred running back in that Tennessee backfield, but only a B- this week. Steelers, a top 12 run defense in terms of yards allowed on the ground. Only 6 rushing scores allowed all year. Derrick Henry, I'm leaving on the bench. We're just not seeing enough volume out of him. I guess DeMarco Murray could surprise you like he did last week. A lot of you probably considered benching him, taking on a tough Bengals front seven, but he surprised, didn't he? I guess it's, like the blind squirrel thing. You know what I'm talking about. For the Steelers, Big Ben, an excellent start this week. Titans are not great against the pass, having allowed the 4th most passing scores with 17. Ben, back at home, almost always an A-level start when facing mediocre secondaries. Antonio Brown, an easy A. The Titans allow nearly 250 yards to opposing receivers per game. Easy money, Antonio Brown. Juju Smith-Schuster, a B grade. Also liking his chances here. He got as many targets as Brown did in last week's win over Indy and actually scored where Brown did not. Martavis Bryant, no better than a dart throw C grade, and none of the Steeler tight ends are worth a look this week. They're all on the bench. Le'Veon Bell draws a tough Titans front seven, allowing only 3.5 yards per carry this season, and have given up only 4 rushing scores on the season. One way he can beat them is through the air. And so Bell, I'm giving a B+ to. Detroit at Chicago. Start with the Lions. Matthew Stafford, who's been extremely solid since his team's Week 7 bye. This week, he'll see a Bears defense that held Brett Hundley to 1 touchdown last week. Drew Brees to none back in Week 8. Cam Newton to none in Week 7. Joe Flacco to none in Week 6. By now, you're getting the drift, right? They're good. Tempering my enthusiasm for Stafford and the Lions receivers this week, giving Stafford a B grade strictly based on volume. I think he'll be throwing a lot. Golden Tate, the same idea, a B grade. Marvin Jones, a C at best. Not much hope for Eric Ebron either. He's back to riding the pine. For the running game, Amir Abdullah is a C grade. We've seen opposing backs have some success against the Bears, like Packers runners last week who totaled 160 rushing yards and a score. Theo Riddick is on the bench. Bears are very good against pass-catching backs. Over to the Bears, Mitch Trubisky. Once again, I'm leaving on the bench. Plenty of options out there that I like much better this week. Pass catchers, I wasn't surprised to see newcomer Dontrell Inman step up and become Trubisky's immediate number one. Trouble is, now the target's squarely on his back in terms of coverage. Darius Slay likely locks onto him for the most part, so Inman only a C grade for me this week. Josh Bellamy, Kendall Wright, Adam Shaheen, any of those sound exciting to you? Good luck with that. All around the bench for me. Jordan Howard, on the other hand, an A grade, despite a disappointing Week 10 versus the Packers, in which he only ran for 3.5 yards per carry. He'll see a Lions defense that got torched by Browns runners for over 200 yards and 2 scores last week. In his 2 head-to-head matchups against the Lions in 2016, Howard averaged over 120 combo yards. He didn't score, but he got plenty of touches. Tariq Cohen is losing snaps to Benny Cunningham in the passing game, so he's on the bench. Cunningham, I'm giving a C grade to. Lions allowed the 9th most receiving yards to opposing backs. Only 1 touchdown through the air, but plenty of yards there. And Cunningham seems to be the latest and greatest in terms of pass-catching backs for Chicago. Jacksonville at Cleveland. Start with the Jags. Blake Bortles threw 51 passes last week in his team's OT win against the Chargers, a top 12 pass defense. This week, he gets a Browns defense that has allowed the 2nd most passing touchdowns on the season and happened to be one of the league's most dominant run-stopping units. Could we see another big volume game out of Bortles this week? I'm giving him a very hesitant B grade, thinking the Jags can and will beat the Browns through the air. That means good news for Marquise Lee. He's a B+. Nobody targeted more, especially in the red zone for the Jags. Allen Hurns, I'd be surprised if he plays this week. Nasty hit on him late last week versus the Chargers. This may be the week we see D.D. Westbrook. I'm not starting him, but a name to know going forward. Not going any deeper than that, but I will mention Keelan Cole. Who? Seeing 8 targets last week. That's interesting to me. Keelan Cole, especially considering this Hearns situation with a potential injury and missing some time. Running game, a big fat disappointment out of Leonard Fournette in Week 10, as we all know, in a very exploitable matchup. This week, though, he gets a Browns defense, only allows 3 yards per carry, but has given up 6 rushing scores on the season. I say Fournette is a B grade here. TJ Yeldon, a C grade. Browns have allowed 3 running back scores through the air this season, so I guess you could take a chance on TJ Yeldon if you like. As far as the Browns are concerned, not much to see here. Entire passing game is on the bench. That includes wide receiver Corey Coleman, who is expected to return to the field this week. That leaves the running game. Isaiah Crowell has shown signs of life lately. This week gets a Jags defense that allows over 4.5 yards per carry. Given enough volume, the Crow is a starter this week, albeit only a B-. He's more valuable in standard leagues, like a solid B. Your PPR play, of course, is Duke Johnson, who continues to put up nice and steady numbers in that particular scoring format. Duke Johnson is a B-, more like a C in standard leagues. He just doesn't have a whole lot of value there, unless, of course, he reaches the end zone. But that's not something you can count on, as we've seen throughout the course of this season from Duke Johnson. One more matchup in this segment. That's Baltimore at Green Bay. Begin with the Ravens. Not the worst spot this week for Joe Flacco in that passing game. Packers are banged up. They're coming off a nearly 300-yard passing performance by Mitchell Trubisky. They're a bottom third defense against the pass, trending the wrong direction. Flacco's a B grade. I know, shocking. In the same week, Blake Bortles and Joe Flacco get decent grades out of me. Jeremy Maclin is also a B. Opposing number ones have fared very well against this secondary, especially in recent weeks. Mike Wallace, a C+, definitely has some scoring upside considering this week's competition. Even Brashad Perriman, if you're in desperation mode in need of a wide receiver, Perriman's a C grade. Not in love with the Ben Watson play, but can't exactly argue his average target share. He's a C+. Runners, Alex Collins is the play in standard leagues. He's a B grade against a Green Bay front seven that allows over 110 yards on the ground per game. They've given up 8 rushing scores. Buck Allen is the PPR angle for now. Danny Woodhead gets it back on the field. I don't think it's this week, but in the coming weeks when Danny Woodhead gets back, he's definitely your PPR play. If he's available on your waiver wire and you're playoff bound, Danny Woodhead, pick him up. Buck Allen is a C+ this week. Packers have typically done very well against pass-catching backs. He will see volume, though, in the short passing game, in this game. But again, once Woodhead returns, I think Buck Allen goes back to being relatively anonymous in this offense. On the Packers side, Brett Hundley gets the league's third-ranked pass defense in terms of yards allowed, leaving him on the bench as they don't allow much in the way of passing scores or production to quarterbacks that can run like Hundley. Believe me, I looked into it. Passing game, not a lot to love here. Devontae Adams, clearly Hundley's number one option, giving him a C+ due to the bad matchup. Isn't it crazy? Jordy Nelson, who when he's been healthy has been so incredibly good. Not so much when Aaron Rodgers is out of the lineup. He's a dart throw C grade. Isn't that shocking? Going forward, a flex play only in mostly favorable matchups, which of course this is not. It's a really tough matchup for the Pack. And Jordy Nelson is nothing more than a dart throw C grade. It's so hard to bench him, isn't it? It's hard to write that guy off. Randall Cobb is also a C grade this week, no better. Running game, not too thrilled with here either. Baltimore, they've been increasingly good since they've gotten healthy in the past 3 weeks. Ty Montgomery, a C+ if, this is a big if, he's able to go. Mostly a PPR play, though he does occasionally get some carries. Those ribs do concern me, however. As if the bad matchup weren't enough. Ty Montgomery's been dealing with rib injuries almost all season long. So the fact that he aggravated another one is not a good deal. I might consider leaving him on the bench. And he might not play anyway. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Jamal Williams steps in with Aaron Jones likely to miss several weeks, but I'm leaving him on the bench as well until we see it. We're just getting started, friends, breaking down all the matchups in Week 11, grading all the fantasy-relevant players. More of those matchups coming next. This is 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show, heard each and every Thursday on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM, ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. The show also available digitally. Catch us anytime on iTunes, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and online at espndesmoines.com, where I post the show on Thursday afternoons, giving you plenty of time to track through it, especially as you set your lineups for Thursday night football. And, of course, we covered that back in the first segment. I'm Andy Hall, on to another set of matchups for Week 11, getting you ready for yet another victory this week. Arizona at Houston. First, the Cardinals. Blaine Gabbert announced as the starting quarterback going forward. He gets a really solid matchup here, facing a Texans secondary that has allowed the second most passing scores in the league. They've also given up the 8th most passing yards to opposing quarterbacks. I can't, in good conscience, advocate you start him right out of the gate, but I will say I like his chances long-term over Drew Stanton any day. And that's probably not saying a whole lot. I'm not going out on a limb, though, for Blaine Gabbert just yet. Larry Fitzgerald still clearly the first option in that passing game. I still like him as a sort of flex option going forward in good matchups. I'm giving him a C+ here because I don't know what to expect from Blaine Gabbert just yet. Still not in love with the John Brown, Jaron Brown, J.J. Nelson trio, leaving them all on the bench, but I do have my eye on tight end Jermaine Gresham, who hauled in 5 passes on 7 targets last week and scored. Texans have allowed the 9th most fantasy points per game to the position. Nice streamer option this week is Jermaine Gresham. And again, a new quarterback under center. Nice little safety valve there. Worth a dart throw. Struggled to find any daylight against Seattle last Thursday night. Talking Adrian Peterson here. Doesn't get any easier against this Texans front 7. Less than 4 yards per carry allowed to opposing backs. Only 3 rushing scores on them all season. AP is a C+. If the Cards get down deep, he's still a decent bet to find the end zone. Otherwise, I don't expect an awful lot out of him. For the Texans, still not a big Tom Savage guy, despite a halfway decent matchup. I'm leaving him on the bench. DeAndre Hopkins, fantasy's #1 scoring wide receiver in half PPR leagues, always in your lineup. Massive volume each and every week. Likely sees Patrick Peterson in this matchup, so he's only a B grade for me this week. Will Fuller's banged up. Next man in is Bruce Ellington, who does have some upside if you're in desperation mode. A C-grade flex option in a pretty good matchup. CJ Fedorowicz, also a desperation play in a decent matchup. Arizona has actually allowed 5 tight end scores this season. Also a C grade is Fedorowicz. Lamar Miller's a C+. I don't see him finding much room to run against these Cardinals, who allow less than 4 yards per carry. He can and does catch passes, though. and is unquestionably the guy the Texans go to down deep. So there is a glimmer of hope if you got him and are starting Lamar Miller. Not going any deeper than that. Sorry, Brian, no Alfred Blue. Tampa at Miami, the battle for supremacy in the Sunshine State. Let's begin with the Bucs. Ryan Fitzpatrick has yet another decent opportunity here. Of course, many of us disappointed in last week's dud, myself included, but we all saw what Cam Newton was able to accomplish on Monday night versus these Dolphins, right? Fitzmagic gets Mike Evans back, which helps a lot. He's a B grade this week for me. Evans is an A grade. If Devin Funchess, Carolina's number one wide receiver, can do what he did on Monday, Evans should be an absolute lock on a short week for the Dolphins. Deshaun Jackson, also a decent option, especially now that Evans commands more coverage. He's a B grade. Cameron Brate went MIA in Week 10. A little cause for concern, I guess, but Miami is a great matchup for tight ends, allowing the 6th most fantasy points per game to the position, 5 scores to opposing tight ends on the season. Brate is a C+. On to the running game, Doug Martin, he's the bell cow, far superior to Jonathan Stewart and Cameron Artis-Payne, who combined for 178 yards rushing and a score on Monday. Martin is an absolute solid A grade for me this week. I'm not touching Charles Sims. I'm not going Jacquizz Rodgers or anybody else they've got in that backfield. It's all about Doug Martin. On the Miami side, also a favorable matchup for the passing game, Jay Cutler. Only mostly worthless outside of garbage time on Monday, but this week sees a Bucs secondary that's been terrible all season long, allowing 266 passing yards per contest, having given up 15 scores. Cutler's a B-. Jarvis Landry, always a solid start, especially in PPR. B+ if you get points for receptions. Solid B if standard. The rest of that passing game kind of is what it is. It's just there. Warm bodies if needed. Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills, Julius Thomas, start at your own risk. None of them better than C-grade starts this week. Kenyon Drake, however, looking like the emerging guy in that backfield. Drake gets a B- this week. He's got some home run ability, as we saw on Monday. Damian Williams merely muddying the fantasy value, so he's your bench guy. LA Rams at Minnesota. Excellent game from a football fan standpoint, but will it yield any fantasy heroes? First, the Rams. Haven't been many quarterbacks as hot as Jared Goff of late. In the last 2 games following the Rams' Week 8 bye, he's averaging over 35 fantasy points per game. I don't see it this week, however, facing one of the league's stingiest pass defenses, the Vikings, who only allow 213 passing yards per game. They've only given up 10 passing scores all season. Goff comes back to earth here. He's a B-. Robert Woods likely avoids Xavier Rhodes' coverage. That'll be for Sammy Watkins, presumably. He's on the bench. Woods, though, probably gets a lot of Trey Waynes, Terrence Newman. We've seen them both get exploited from time to time, and Woods sees a lot of volume. He's a B grade. Cooper Kupp is a C grade. I'm not looking at tight end Tyler Higbee this week. Tough matchup against those Minnesota linebackers. Then there's Todd Gurley, who will see a Vikings front 7 that allows only 3.4 yards per carry and are among the league's best against pass-catching backs as well. Gurley only a C+ this week. Don't see him surprising anyone, especially not the Mike Zimmer-led Minnesota defense. They'll be expecting a lot of him. Over to the Vikings, where I don't see a quarterback controversy. I don't know why there ever was talk of one. Case Keenum is the guy, at least for now. He faces a Rams secondary similarly stingy against opposing passers, only 204 passing yards per game allowed, only 11 passing scores on the season. They've collected 12 INT. Keenum is a C+. There is a bit of upside thanks to his pass catchers. Stephon Diggs proved to the world last week. It doesn't matter who's trying to cover him. He's a lock in your starting lineup. I've always likened Diggs to an early version of Antonio Brown in terms of how he competes. I love this guy. Diggs is a B+ this week. Adam Thielen out of the slot, a B grade. Also borderline wide receiver 1 option most weeks. Tempering my enthusiasm just a bit here due to the tough matchup. Tight end Kyle Rudolph in a neutral matchup is a C+. The runner should fare relatively well against these Rams. Jerick McKinnon, the better option of the 2 main guys. He's a B grade. LA ranks 22nd in rushing yards allowed, 118 per game. They've given up 8 scores on the ground. That brings Latavius Murray into the discussion, certainly, as the main short yardage and goal line guy. He's a B- this week. Kansas City at the New York Giants. On the Chiefs side, Alex Smith, still fantasy's number 3 overall scorer, coming off a bye, and gets perhaps the league's biggest dumpster fire on the defensive side of the ball. Plenty to like about Smith this week. An A- and can also add some rushing yards for you as well, which helps. Giants are tied with the Jets for the most passing touchdowns allowed with 20. Tyreek Hill is an easy A grade despite likely coverage from Janoris Jenkins, but even he's underperformed as of late and clearly isn't back to 100% health, which does make a difference. Travis Kelce is the other A grade. What's the golden rule at tight end in 2017? You know it. Start your tight ends versus the Giants, who have yet to play a game this year without giving up a tight end score. There may even be room for DeAnthony Thomas this week. He'll see Eli Apple in coverage, a plus matchup for sure. So Thomas, I'm giving a C+ too. Kareem Hunt's cold streak ends this week, ladies and gentlemen. The Giants have allowed third most rushing yards to opposing backs on the season, over 132 per game, and have given up 6 rushing scores. They are also very friendly to pass-catching backs, which Kareem Hunt can be. A grade for Hunt, who gets back on track here. Any Giants worth a look this week at all? Actually, I believe so, actually. Garbage time specials include quarterback Eli Manning, who I'll discuss more at length later in the show. Running back Orleans Darkwa has another positive matchup against a defense nearly as leaky as the Giants. Darkwa disappointed last week. He didn't get into the end zone, but remains a viable option here. He's a B-. Wayne Gallman, I'll give a C+ to. He'll also get some looks. And the pass catchers, Sterling Shepard, an A grade. Chiefs have been pretty terrible all year against opposing number one. Shepard is clearly Manning's first option on any given pass play. Tight end Evan Ingram, got to give a B grade too here, only because the Chiefs have actually been pretty decent against tight ends this season, allowing only 1 score to the position all year. If this was even a neutral matchup, Evan Ingram would have been an A grade in this. I'm certain of it. Evan Ingram is a must start every week now. And that's crazy to say because you know how I feel about rookie tight ends. All right, final matchup of this segment, Washington at New Orleans. Start with the Skins facing a much improved opportunistic Saints defense that's become one of the league's best, particularly against the pass. Kirk Cousins finished Week 10 with 327 yards passing, a score, and an INT against a similarly tough Minnesota secondary. I think he's no better than a B grade this week. Considering the state of Washington's run game or lack thereof, I believe he'll be throwing more, which could be a good thing. But on the other hand, Saints are no slouch. Josh Doctson is Cousins' number 1 wide receiver option, also a B grade this week. Saints don't have a Xavier Rhodes type of shutdown corner that'll shadow Doctson. Instead, they're just kind of solid all around. Jamison Crowder may see more action this week from the slot. In PPR leagues, he's a B grade. Slight downgrade if you're in a standard. Terrell Pryor, kind of a lost cause at this point on the bench. And Vernon Davis, whether or not Jordan Reed's in the lineup, is a solid start. New Orleans has allowed a total of 5 tight end touchdowns on the season. Davis is a B- this week. Samaje Perine presumably gets the early down work now with Rob Kelly expected to miss 3 to 6 weeks. Perine has done nothing to show me he's worth a spot in your starting lineup. Giving him a desperation C grade because he will get touches, and I'm realistic enough to know slim pickings out there on the waiver wire. I'm sure he was one of the top ads this week. Chris Thompson, again, is the back you want in your lineup. The Saints have allowed the 6th most receiving yards to running backs this season. Only 1 touchdown, but Thompson should be plenty busy. He's a B+ in PPR, more like a B, B- in standard leagues. Swinging over to the Saints, Drew Brees, as always, a must start. But with his running game working as well as it has over the past month plus, his stats have taken a nosedive from a passing standpoint. But again, you can't bench him. Washington just gave up 300-plus yards passing and 4 touchdowns to Case Keenum last week in Washington. Giving Brees a B+ here. Michael Thomas showed up in a big way last week. That will not happen this week with Josh Norman locking on to him. A C+ for Michael Thomas. A B+ for Ted Ginn. Outside guys that avoid Norman coverage succeed against Washington. I think he could be good for a long one this weekend. And he has scored on them in his last 2 head-to-head matchups, looking at the history here. Willie Snead, Kobe Fleener, no thanks. I'll pass on those fellas. But Brandon Coleman, interesting. We'll talk more about him later in the show. Running game, I like both guys, and that's pretty obvious here. Mark Ingram, obvious A grade. Alvin Kamara gets a B. Should be plenty to go around. If you own both, I wouldn't hesitate to start both. Running backs 1 and 2, a running back 1 and a flex, however you want to combo them. If you own Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, you are in very, very good shape week to week with those Saints running backs and pass catchers as well, because Ingram can do both. More matchups for Week 11. We're breaking it down for you. 515 Fantasy Football. This is 1350 AM ESPN Radio. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. Also available digitally. You can go back and listen to any part of the show at your leisure. I do appreciate you listening. I'm Andy Hall, breaking down all the Week 11 matchups, grading all the fantasy-relevant players as we do. Quick reminder to like us on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football. If you're looking for any kind of help, you can hit us there. Or on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. Happy to talk whatever you want to talk about. Rock and roll, heavy metal, Metallica, fantasy football, whatever. I've got all kinds of, interests there. So that would be the place to hit me up if you so should choose. Back into the matchups we go. Buffalo at the L.A. Chargers. Begin with the Bills and something called Nathan Peterman, the rookie quarterback, facing one of the better pass rushes in the league. I got to say, the Chargers are very good up front. Get after the quarterback with Joey Bosa and the crew. We don't know much about Peterman aside from what we saw in the preseason, so it's hard to be excited about his prospects in the passing department. Chargers corners Casey Hayward, Trevor Williams, both top 10 at their position, according to Pro Football Focus. Peterman is on the bench this week. His pass catchers fading the majority of them as well, aside from maybe Kelvin Benjamin, but admittedly, that's a shot in the dark. Tight end Charles Clay might be a nice safety valve for Peterman, knowing he'll likely be running for his life quite a bit in this game. Runners, it's LaShawn McCoy and nobody else. A grade this week, facing one of the league's worst defenses in terms of run stopping. The Chargers give up over 135 rushing yards per game. They've allowed 6 rushing scores and can be gashed by pass-catching backs as well. No doubt the Bills will lean more heavily on LaShawn McCoy this week with a new quarterback under center. And I think what the Chargers are doing is they're just over-pursuing quarterbacks, and when there's a handoff, running back's already into the second level, and it's just a matter of making one or two guys miss, and there's some big gains there to be had for LaShawn McCoy. For the Chargers, I'll say this. Rivers and this passing game got lucky last week. Jacksonville does indeed have a weak spot, as we saw last week, and the Chargers were able to exploit it, not once but twice, and I think the first one definitely by accident. Second one, that worked, so keep doing it. I think that was purely by accident. This week, a Bills secondary that regularly gets lit up on the ground, so I don't see an awful lot of throwing. Of course, we said that last week. We didn't expect Jacksonville to throw at all. And they threw a lot, like 51 times a lot from, yes, that Blake Bortles. Wow. B- for Rivers this week. Best of the pass catchers is still Keenan Allen, though he's been largely missing in action of late. He's a B- as well. Tyrell Williams, no better than a C grade. Hunter Henry, alarmingly missing in action recently. Bill's typically been very good against tight ends. Henry is on the bench for me this week. I was going to give him a starting grade, but what I saw last week did not sit well. He was basically ignored. Melvin Gordon, a lot of questions this week about him. Listen to me closely. Do not worry about Melvin Gordon. 21 touches in Week 10, despite not much success. He is not in any way, shape, or form being supplanted all of a sudden by Austin Eckler. Eckler is a factor, yes, but this is still Gordon's backfield. He's an A grade this week. Bills got absolutely demolished by Saints runners last week, and I think Gordon's back on track this week for you. Eckler gets a C+, only in PPR leagues. Some carries, but mostly used as a change of pace pass-catching type. Like I said, lucky last week. Jacksonville simply had no answer for him, and he hit pay dirt twice, and there you have it. Cincinnati at Denver start on the Bengals side. Oddly enough, this Broncos defense that has had the perception of shutdown corners and virtually nothing to like about an opponent's passing game hasn't been themselves of late. In fact, despite the fact that they're top 10 in terms of passing yards allowed per game, they've allowed the second most passing scores on the season with 19. That's only one behind the Giants and the Jets dumpster fires. Dalton has enough weapons to make this a worthwhile start. He's a B grade. A.J. Green likely sees a lot of Aqib Talib, but you can't sit him. I'm only giving Green a C+. He does have that home run ability, as we saw last week. Brandon LaFell, the clear number 2 in this offense, gets the Chris Harris treatment. He's a C grade. I think Harris is better than Talib, to be honest with you, in terms of coverage. I think Pro Football Focus actually agrees with me on that. Tight end Tyler Kroft, a B grade. The way to beat the Broncos through the air is over the middle third of the field, and Kroft has stepped up big time in the absence of the perpetually injured Tyler Eifert. Joe Mixon, the only Bengals back I'm interested in, only a C grade, though. Denver's actually been very good all year against opposing backs. Where they're clearly slipping is in that secondary. But they're remaining stout up front. So I'm not in love with any of those Bengals backs, but I guess if I had to pick one, it would be Joe Mixon. For the Broncos, not a lot to love here. Not starting Brock Osweiler. Bengals ranked 4th in passing yards allowed, giving up only 11 passing scores on the season. Demaryius Thomas, only a C+ this week. I like Emmanuel Sanders, only slightly better. He's a B-. Nobody else I care about from a passing game standpoint. Running game? So hard to figure out, right? C.J. Anderson flashed last week after many of his owners had reached the point of either benching or outright dropping him. Figure in what looks to be a pretty positive matchup with Cincy, giving up a lot of yards, but not necessarily a lot of rushing scores. Anderson's good for at least a C+ this week, given the volume I think I expect from him. Jamal Charles, Devontae Booker, I'm steering clear of. Their roles aren't well enough defined to roll the dice, at least not in my opinion. New England at Oakland. Very rarely do I pull this on you. But honestly, this is one of those start everyone games. I'm not going to be completely lazy and just leave it at that. But you literally, I think, start pretty much everyone. All the major players. For the Patriots, Tom Brady, obvious A grade. Same for Brandon Cooks. This is one of those matchups where I believe he'll explode. And you get these from Brandon Cooks from time to time. Yes, he'll disappear once in a while. And then every once in a while, make you wish you had him in your lineup. It's usually right about the time you're thinking about like benching him for somebody else because he just hasn't been worth a crap. And then you bench him, and then he goes off. Well, don't bench him this week. It's a really good matchup. Also an A-grade, Rob Gronkowski. Not that you were thinking about benching him. Oh, sure, Martellus Bennett. And oh, sure, Dwayne Allen. I get it. They'll get some looks, but only to give Gronk a breather from time to time. I like Danny Amendola in this matchup. Slot guys like him do very well against the Raiders. Amendola is a B grade. As far as the running backs are concerned, Deion Lewis, the closest thing to a sure thing the Patriots have, I guess. Raiders, again, a very mediocre unit both against the pass and the run. Lewis is a B+. Rex Burkhead, involved in the short yardage game and some pass-catching plays as well, a C+. James White, a C grade. He'll be involved, especially in the passing game. That's pretty much everybody, isn't it? I didn't mention Mike Gillislee. He was a healthy scratch last week, which is not a good sign for Mike Gillislee going forward. He's already been dropped in several leagues I've seen. Over to the Oakland side, same story. You're starting almost everybody. Derek Carr is an A grade. Despite some improvement shown by the Patriots defense over the past month or so, his weapons are healthy, and he'll need to throw in order to keep pace with Brady and company. Michael Crabtree is an A grade. Amari Cooper, I'm giving a B. If drops were no issue for number 89, he'd be more highly graded. It is an issue. Still, he's a decent wide receiver 2 flex option. Tight end Jared Cook. I just coughed up a hairball after I said that. He's also in play. He's been targeted quite a bit by Carr in recent weeks. I like Jared Cook this week. I give him a B-. Marshawn Lynch, the only Raiders back I'm interested in, I'm giving him a B+ because I believe he'll have a shot up close at least once, maybe more. And beast mode ain't dead yet. You know, he finally did what I thought he was going to do all season. The last time the Raiders were on the field, he scored 2 touchdowns. Let's see more of that. That's what I would love to see. One more matchup in this segment, and that's the Sunday nighter, Philly at Dallas. Like the last matchup, a lot of fantasy help here as well. First, the Eagles. Quarterback Carson Wentz has been unstoppable and will not be slowed by these Cowboys, even on the road. It's him, it's Jared Goff the last few weeks. Carson Wentz is an A grade. Nelson Aguilar is a B+. Slot guys against Dallas tend to score touchdowns. I believe Aguilar is good for at least one this week. Alshon Jeffrey is an A grade. Might be the first one I've given out to him this year. Cowboys have nobody that can cover his combination of size and jump, especially down deep, and I think that's where they're going to be looking for him. Tight end Zach Ertz, also an A grade. Assuming he's ready to roll after a couple of weeks to rest that hamstring, a must start every week when he's healthy. There has been really nobody better than Zach Ertz at the tight end position this year, and that includes Rob Gronkowski. I'll take Zach Ertz. Jay Ajayi will be more involved in the Philly run game, according to coaches there. I'm buying. He's a B+. Despite Dallas being a top 12 run defense and the fact that Ajayi doesn't really catch passes, I like his touchdown potential here. If the volume's there, which I think it will be, I like Jay Ajayi. LeGarrette Blount is a forgotten man, though may still get some goal line work. That's a very long may. I'm not sure about it, though. A dangerous roll of the dice, banking on a touchdown. I'm leaving him on the bench this week. Wendell Smallwood, the main change of pace back, a pass catcher. I'm giving him a C+, only in PPR leagues, though. I wouldn't mess with Wendell Smallwood if you're in a standard. Over to the Cowboys, Dak Prescott has all kinds of issues staying upright due to injuries on the offensive line. That's the main problem. It has disrupted this passing game, the running game as well for the Cowboys, who got absolutely manhandled by Adrian Claiborne and the Falcons in Week 10. Prescott is a B- this week. Eagles aren't that special in the secondary, but they will blitz a ton, and that could be trouble. Des Bryant's a B grade. I think the opportunities will be there. This dude loves the bright lights, right? Nationally televised spectacle. Wouldn't be surprised if he hits pay dirt. Cole Beasley, Terrence Williams, Bryce Butler. I'm not sure who it'll be this week, so they're all on the bench for me. Tight end Jason Witten as well. Eagles elite against tight ends. Alfred Morris, still presumably the early down guy for Dallas. Only a C grade, considering the offensive line woes the Cowboys are having. And pass catcher Rod Smith, a C+, but only in full PPR leagues. He's getting a lot of targets there. All right, one more matchup, and then we got our bargain bin and recap Week 10 of the 515 Fantasy Football Listener League as well. It's all next on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. You are listening to the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. Again, we're available digitally as well on Apple Podcasts /iTunes, on Stitcher, and on ESPNDesMoines.com by Thursday afternoons on demand as well. I'm Andy Hall. Appreciate you checking me out here again today as we continue to break down Week 11. Coming up here in just a bit, your bargain bin picks, your recap of the Listener League as well. One final matchup to break down is the Monday Nighter, Atlanta at Seattle. On the Falcons side, plenty to like about Matt Ryan in that passing game. Seahawks all kinds of banged up in that secondary. Earl Thomas out. Richard Sherman out. Cam Chancellor not 100%. Will likely give it a go on Monday. Panic in the Puget Sound on the defensive side of the ball. That should be a headline. Matt Ryan gets the rare A grade against Seattle in Seattle. Julio Jones an A grade as well. Big game forthcoming for number 11. Also see good things for Mohamed Sanu, giving him a B grade. Tight end Austin Hooper a C. Until his volume increases, he's merely a dart throw. With Devontae Freeman out with his second concussion of the season, it's the Tevin Coleman show. Seattle is a top 10 unit against the run, but 8 scores have been allowed on the season. The kind of volume Coleman should see this week, I'm comfortable giving him a solid B grade in this matchup. That's it for the Falcons. How about those Seahawks? Atlanta, top 5 in passing yards allowed. They have given up 11 passing scores and are susceptible to quarterbacks that can run. That fits the bill for Russell Wilson. He's a B+ this week. His pass catchers, I'm feeling Doug Baldwin this week. Slot guys tend to fare much better than the outside receivers versus these Falcons. Baldwin is an A grade. Not as high on Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett, both dart throw C grades for me. Again, Atlanta, not terrible in the secondary at all. Tight end Jimmy Graham, coming off a big 2-score game. I actually only have him down as a C+ this week. Falcons have been very good against the position. And again, I think Doug Baldwin is the way to go from a passing game standpoint. Running game, Thomas Rawls, a C grade. I just can't muster any more enthusiasm for him than that. Only other option here is J.D. McKissick, and I'll be talking about him shortly. One final note, an update for you. I've just been notified here. I'm watching some TV, and I noticed that Phillip Rivers, L.A. Chargers quarterback, is in the league's concussion protocol. And, boy, he's looking questionable for this weekend. So not that I was feeling too great about his matchup anyway, but I think it's going to be a big Melvin Gordon game for the Chargers anyway. But, yeah, Phillip Rivers, not 100% to play this weekend. So that is something of note. If you're tracking through and you heard me mention Phillip Rivers earlier in the show, I'm now correcting that. Thank you very much. Bargain Bin segment sponsored by our friends at Twisted Vine Brewing Company on Westtown Parkway in West Des Moines. They are online at twistedvinebrewery.com. 30 beers on tap, 25 of those brewed on site in the building, and it's a really cool place if you've never been on the inside before. TVs everywhere. You can watch NFL Red Zone, Sunday Red Zone on Sundays, and get caught up on all your favorite fantasy players there. It's a great way to watch. I know you've got your favorite teams and you want to watch them, but watching Red Zone on Sunday, really the way to go if you're a diehard fantasy guy like I am. Your bargain bin picks this week, of course, it's one quarterback, one running back, and one pass catcher. At the quarterback position for me this week, Eli Manning. A fantastic opportunity here to nab Manning on the cheap and plug him in against a Chiefs secondary that has allowed the 6th most passing yards in the league. They've given up 16 passing scores on the season. Add to the stats the fact that the Giants will more than likely be playing catch-up the entire game, meaning a ton of attempts and potential for garbage time production. Oh, by the way, Manning is owned in only 1/2 of all Yahoo Fantasy leagues. 50% of leagues, Eli's still out there. Grab him if you need a quarterback this week. Your running back is J.D. McKissick of the Seattle Seahawks. With C.J. Prosise likely back on the sidelines, the Seahawks turned to scat back McKissick, who flashed back in Week 4, if you'll remember, rushing for one score, catching a pass for another. Also with Prosise out of the lineup, that's when he was able to do that. This week, McKissick, who is only owned in 3% of Yahoo Fantasy leagues, once again becomes the primary change of pace guy that will get some carries, but also catch some passes. And against Atlanta, that's a very good thing. The Falcons have allowed the most running back receptions in the league, the 10th most receiving yards to the position, a total of 3 scores through the air to pass-catching backs as well. It's an excellent matchup. You can feel good about taking advantage of this week if you're in a pinch at running back. Chances are J.D. McKissick is still out there. My pass catcher this week is Brandon Coleman of the New Orleans Saints. Slot receivers have torched the Washington Redskins. Over the last month plus, Adam Thielen, Doug Baldwin, Nelson Aguilar, and Aldrick Robinson have all scored on them, posting an average yardage total of over 96 per game. Coleman, owned in only 5% of Yahoo Fantasy leagues, has been on the field far more than Willie Snead since Snead's return from injury. Trouble has been the success of the Saints' running game, creating far less need for 3 wide receiver sets. But make no mistake, Coleman is an excellent dart throw this week, considering Washington can't seem to cover those slot guys. All right, the 515 Fantasy Football Listener League, of course, presented by our friends at Iowa Firecracken. Iowa-owned, Iowa-operated, America-approved. Find them online at firecracken.com. They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter, at iFirecracken. Special message from our friend Matt Bales, one of the 3 brilliant minds behind Iowa Firecracken. He wanted me to pass along to you that their Windsor Heights location off I-235 and the 8th Street, 73rd Street exit, open for business beginning December 10. Circle it on your calendar. December 10. Fireworks of all shapes, sizes, colors, all reasonably priced. Back on sale December 10. We hope if you're in the market, you choose to buy local from 3 guys that have been supporting the show all season long. Big fantasy fans, as well as beautiful things that go boom. It's time for a recap of Week 10 of the Listener League. My squad, I called it. Straight up barbecued oink. I smoked you, pal. Followed by a thorough shredding. By the time I was done with him, there was nothing left, just like a real barbecue. Big win for my boys, 108.40 to 85.46. The artist formerly known as Comb the Desert squeaks one out over Brian's team, 88.28 to 80.42. Brian's still in the running for lovable loser this year. Steve pulls one out of his buttocks, upsetting Free Willy guys, 60.26 to 59.50. Nice job, Willie. Low score of the week. Second lowest, Steve. Wah, wah, wah. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't. A defensive struggle, as they might say. Moo Cow Guy whooped up on Petty and the Jets, 102.94 to 49.58. So actually, I was wrong. Petty and the Jets, low score for the week. Ugh, gross. Phillips Bolo Tie avoids becoming a cellar dweller, upsetting Boomin, who continues to implode like his Cowboys. Final score 115.66 to 114.64. Cam Newton special on Monday night seals the deal in this one. Finally, our game of the week, number 1 ranked Purple People Eaters remain undefeated. Dude is unstoppable. Taco Corp ate it this time around, 125.42 to 99.84. This week, another pushover for yours truly up against Petty and the Jets, who got lucky back in week 2. Ain't happening again, my man. Expect to be beaten down and bruised this week. Couple duds facing off in Brian's team and booming this week as well in the Who Gives a Crap Bowl. Sorry, Maddie and Brian, I couldn't resist. Artist formerly known as Comb the Desert sees a fired-up Steve's Annihilator squad. Taco Corp looking to deep fry some moo cow this week. Sounds tasty. Free Willy treading water gets our lovable loser oink. And finally, our undisputed, undefeated, number 1 seeded Purple People Eaters certain to bow out of the playoffs round 1. That's how it goes, right? Gets a look at Phillips Bolotai, who showed last week he's more than capable of the upset. If only Cam Newton weren't on a bye this week. Oops. Guess you've got some work to do, my man. Good luck to all of you this week, except for Petty and the Jets. You suck. All right, folks. Appreciate you listening. Hopefully you got some valuable information this week out of the show. If you missed any part of it, you can go back and listen at your leisure. We are available digitally on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, online at espndesmoines.com as well. Until next week, I'm Andy Hall. This is 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio.